Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is David Perry. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm with the Office of the CISO Field Security Team, or Customer Security and Trust Team. That's normally actually retitled as. But we hope that this session, or actually today's events at the Fed Forum, has been informative, thoughtful speakers, really great to see some familiar faces. But today we're going to get into our favorite topic, ATOs. By myself, I kind of segue into what this topic is today. So I'm one of the 3 approvers to go ahead and allow FedRAMP instances to be released to customers and so forth. But we had a really interesting dialogue with these gentlemen in terms of how to manage ATOs. A little bit of some housekeeping items. I know this is our last session before everyone starts drinking, so I know, right. But please feel free, please just come out to the networking reception tonight. We really would appreciate your presence there. So let's get into our intros. We don't have a picture. Because I've never been with a camera that liked me. All right, I'm going to start with Alex Beachy. He is a Marine veteran who spent his years on both the origination and acquisition side of the Corps. He now leads naval organizations through digital transformation, turning business challenges into strategic growth as a ServiceNow enterprise account executive. I don't know what any of that really means. Marine. Drinking at some point, I don't know. All right. BuyIn here, ATO Van, right? Is that how you like to be called? Yeah, BuyIn. Is also a Marine veteran with supply chain logistics and operations experience. He's retired from the Marine Corps, or he did retire from the Marine Corps in 2010. He has worked in IT acquisitions since 2000. Actually, I have it backwards. Yeah, 2009, he retired, right? And then now he's worked in IT acquisitions since 2010. His significant projects include virtualizing the United States Marine Corps data centers and stood up the well-known Marine Corps software factory called MC Boss, for those of you who are familiar with that. I'm not done yet. Maybe the few people actually know what that is. He also took over the government's lead of PO Digital's ServiceNow platform for a year now, and has worked to expand the offering and streamlining the process through automation. Guys, welcome. So we're going to actually just launch into a really easy softball question. And that question is, what sort of misconceptions, and I'll start with BuyIn, maybe you want to add in if you want. What sort of misconceptions that you see when it comes to managing ATOs in the context of different types of cloud models like SaaS, PaaS, and infrastructure as a service?
Probably that having a provisional authority or having an as of service designation equals an ATO. It's one of the controls that we look at to have an ATO, but to get to ATO is a much deeper dive. The inheritance model is beautiful, and we make extensive use of it within the Naval Enterprise ATO, but getting to ATO is a long process, and that is why we've kind of gone into our enterprise model so that we can save as many people as possible from that little ring of hell.
Right.
It is the ring of hell.
I mean, actually, I would actually also add, when it comes to that sort of explanation, the misconception that I've seen is in the area of like the shared responsibility, right?
Yes.
So shared responsibility is a big thing. And so it's really critical to have, like, say, what ServiceNow has is a customer responsibility matrix. So as Van and Alex, they kind of maneuver through the waters of an ATO, they're able to take a look at our CRM, or customer responsibility matrix, to understand what responsibilities does the service provider has, but also what Van's organization will consist of, or what they're going to be on the hook for.
And I think with that too, the challenge that Van's team often faces is they have to digest that customer responsibility matrix, not just for how the PEO operates to get the ATO, but then how do other Navy customers who are now a ServiceNow customer and a PEO digital customer, what are their shared responsibilities? What do they have to accept, and how does the organization, the enterprise organization, support that? And then the other side of it too is time to value, time to ATO. You know, a lot of times the average is you're looking at a year and a half or so. They did it in, I want to say it was like 92 days. Now it was a crunch, but it was accelerated. And I think because a lot of things already exist.
Because it was the #1 priority of the NAO at the time, and they put it to the top of the list. Because it's a long list, and I won't even say it's distinguished. But getting to that, really what I want to talk to folks about today is the business value of our enterprise model. And Alex's point there is that it takes 18 months, and we've estimated anywhere from 1.5 to about $3 million to get to an ATO. So if somebody else already has an ATO, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to spend that much time, that much money, that much effort, live that much time in that outer ring of hell that I spoke of when, like I say, somebody else has already done it? So that's what we've done with within the naval enterprise is we took your provisional authority, we added the DISA controls, we added the SCCA controls, then we went and answered the last little piece of that for the Naval Authorization Office, the NAO, so that we're dealing with maybe 10% of the total controls to get to that ATO, and our customers are dealing with maybe 1% of the controls. They just have to make sure that they're complying with what we're doing, what we're providing. They don't have to do all that other work. And we can onboard a customer, usually from start to finish, we're done within 90 days. So 90 days to ATO, fully operational capability, or 18 months to fully operational capability. We provide DevSecOps capabilities, DevSec and production instances, and we do that across the enterprise for both Navy and Marine Corps. So that's really the big business value that we get out of this, is that we're saving all of our customers literally tens of millions of dollars. And then within that, just keeping an ATO up every year. I'm sure some of you folks out here have to do that. Annual security controls, how much fun is that? Getting your ATO renewed every 3 years, that's a lot of fun too. Well, if somebody else is going to do that for you, how much are you willing to pay for that every year?
Right.
We charge our customers, you know, we've got some different instances, but less than $50,000 a year for that service. So again, multiplying that across, we've got about 25 customers onboarding. We've got another 10 to 15 in the pipeline. That's $2.5 to $3 million a year that we're saving the enterprise cost avoidance. You know, $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
It definitely adds
So,
up. Yeah, it adds up, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's a good segue. I was wondering, I know you shared a little bit. I was wondering if you can share a little bit in terms of, you know, what sort of lessons learned or things that were overlooked, you know, as you kind of maneuvered or just kind of gone through that whole journey of obtaining your authorization as an agency.
Can I pivot a little bit here to
Sure.
so I think the RMF process is pretty well understood. What you need to do, the ISSAs, the ISSCs, they know what they need to do to get you there. It's not a fun process. It's painful and it's time consuming and it's expensive, as we've talked about, but there's not a whole lot of mystery in getting an ATO. It's just, you know, a lot of little death of a thousand cuts kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But you get there. The thing that we're struggling with is the business model of how do you implement that and make it pay for itself when you're not a service center. You know, I don't know the Navy has service centers and they're set up to bring money in, but we at PEO Digital, and particularly down at the Platform Application Services, which is the branch of PEO Digital that provides the snazzy service. Or I should have said snazzy with jazz
Or
hands.
jazz hands.
Jazz hands, yeah.
Snazzy.
That would have been better.
That's my project. It's the ServiceNow as a service enterprise snazzy. And you got to say it with jazz hands, otherwise it's just not as much fun. The thing that we've struggled with the most in implementing that business model is the fee-for-service piece. And so what I would advise anyone who's going to go down this path, and I think really everyone should, is make sure you have a fee-for-service model that is efficient and effective. We got there, but God bless Laura Reed, who was our business financial manager. The way we are currently set up, and we're going back to the drawing board to revamp this entire model, but it was literally a series of one-off processes. Everyone, depending upon color of money, depending upon what echelon they were, et cetera, made it a different process for each individual. And what does ServiceNow do? It gives you, some nice processes and it's process-oriented and all that. Well, maybe we should have got the product before we developed the pay model, but it was very painful, and we, like I say, we backed off this year, and we're looking to re-implement the fee-for-service. But that would be the number one thing, is figure out how you're going to pay for it. Everyone says, oh, it's fee-for-service. Well, that brings a whole nother set of challenges to work through to get to an efficient and effective way of doing that. So by all means, you can, this is not difficult. Our cost card is, you start going through there and makes sense. It's perfectly, as a customer, they go through, oh yeah, makes good sense. We're not overcharging. We're not charging for stuff that doesn't make sense to the customer. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to get those funds, no matter how reasonable it is. There needs to be a way to do that. So the biggest lesson learned for us is to start with the end in mind in terms of your fee-for-service model and how do you do that. It's all well and good to say you're as a service, but unless you're in an organization that is not adopting the operational model that DoD is, which is that your warfighters, your operational forces, pay for the services. You're only paying for things that you're using that way. And that was what we had in mind, but the hierarchy of administration, if you will, the financial hierarchy within the Navy just was not conducive to that fee-for-service model. So
Gotcha.
that's the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now. And so the advice that I would give in terms of lessons learned, know how to pay for it.
That's a good point. Alex, I'm going to
Yeah, I think to that vein too, though, it's also, we're asking an internal organization to sell itself, so really was some of the things we learned is communication. How do we, collectively as partners make sure that the other parts of the Navy and Marine Corps understand what the ATO is and what their responsibilities are? So to the point where I was, now as the account executive, I have no RMF experience. I will tell you that. I tried to avoid it when I was in the Marine Corps, and now I feel like I'm eyeball deep in it almost every day. And creating a document to share with my own internal team so that they can understand, hey, when your customer asks you, this is what this means. So some of it is also, how do you sell that to the rest of the Navy? Because a lot of times people just don't understand. They see ServiceNow, they're like, oh, okay, we've got an ATO, but what does that really mean? Wait, why should I pay PEO Digital for an ATO? And it's like, well, because you could alternatively do it yourself. And to Van's point, you're going to spend 15x or more on an ATO to do it yourself. So it's helping them sell the value in an enterprise offering, but the time to value for everything is way faster. So I think one of the biggest hurdles from my side that we faced was just that communication aspect internally amongst ServiceNow, between ServiceNow and PEO Digital, and then with the rest of Navy and the Marine Corps as well.
Cool.
He brings up a point, something that I'll play off there. The internal communication is another, there's a value added piece there, in that when he talks to the naval enterprise, he's talking to there's one belly button to push. That's us. When you talk to other organizations, there's multiple ATOs that you have to deal with. And so that turnaround time between, oh, we've got an issue, to, okay, we've got the right people working it and we've got a resolution, is much shorter when you're dealing with one ATO in comparison to multiple ATOs across the enterprise.
So you're really, you're building, or you've built a blueprint in terms of how other organizations are able to create their own, I would say, an ATO as a service, right? And now those sub-agencies or sub-orgs can essentially, adopt or inherit, that respective ATO. Alex, a question for you. So you and I, we've collaborated a couple times. We shared ideas. What sort of things that you can share, maybe we haven't talked about today, that that you were able to help Van navigate as they were kind of going through this sort of phase?
So I think, some of it is the communications, like I addressed.
Yep.
Other sides of it is also just making sure, reach back to, to our collaborations of finding the right people internally. Like I said, I'm not a security expert. I rely on David for that, and making sure that we're pulling in the right resources. And it does make it a lot more efficient. And we got greater buy-in, I'll say, from the rest of ServiceNow as a company. Because now, to Van's point, we only have that one belly button, that only one organization that we really have to work with. All the scans that need to be done, like Fleet Cyber Command,
bring that up, yeah.
like they want to do scans all the time. Well, if any of you are familiar with the sort of our scan policy, you get a 30-day window for once a year.
Right.
Well, what we propositioned to them is like, look, we have one entity that's managing the authority to operate for 30-some customers. So how about we just allow, instead of 30 different customers coming to you each with their own 30-day window, how about we just give PEO Digital the year window to do scans? And it's like, okay, we can, that's actually less work on the security team.
Oh,
right?
I was going to say, yeah, that really would help us out a lot. So,
Yeah.
especially our support teams, right, that are fielding those cases as those pen test requests are being spun up. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
You're done?
I'm done.
Okay, good. Just make sure. I don't want to cut you
I
off.
can keep going, but it'll be nonsense.
Oh, I know you can. Van, I was wondering, maybe, this is something that I understand, but
Architecture,
perhaps,
yay.
yes. So I was
Someone
wondering if you
out
could
here
share.
was like, are you going to go deep into ATOs? And I'm like, no, don't do that. But this is what you're seeing here is our basic architecture. So the green box is the ServiceNow element of this, and that's their government commercial cloud offering, and the FedRAMP and all of the bits that we inherit from them. We then, from the green box, you slide over into the light blue box, which is our NAVFAC Azure environment. That's the authentication piece of the puzzle. So we have it set up so that anyone with a CAT card, whether you're on a government computer or whether you're sitting at your home computer as a contractor, can take their card, their CAT card, and with that they can log into our portal, into the cloud.navy.mil portal, and that will give them their ServiceNow account on the enterprise server. From there, if they're a basic user, all of their permissions are automated and put on that account for them. They can get in and they can start doing the whether it's an agile, using the agile module, or whatever they want to do within within the enterprise instance, they can do that. If they need additional permissions, or if they're going to one of our dedicated instances, which is also in the green box there. So we're kind of set up, we are set up so that we have our enterprise instance, and then we have a number of dedicated instances. And that's how we divide our customers. So our enterprise customers are the folks that only need to use the modules, the ServiceNow modules that we offer at the enterprise level, that we're licensed at the enterprise level for. And they're willing to give up some degrees of control to my enterprise team. We also have our dedicated instances, and that's the folks who want to do something that we don't currently offer as an enterprise capability, or that they want to maintain control of, or that they're doing what we call a use case 3, which means they're connecting to outside services. Control mechanisms there. So if you're a dedicated user, or you have a dedicated instance, you're a dedicated customer, that's your instance. It's under our ATO, but you own all the admin underneath there. You do all your customer, all your user management, all your user admin. You have your sysadmin in that dedicated instance. And then you inherit that last level of controls for that capability. But you're still falling underneath our ATO, under the SCCA capability, DISA, etc. So all of that, it gets inherited as a dedicated instance, and that's there in the green box. So that's where you get your, as a user, that's where you get your rights, you know, where you need to go in. If you need to be able to write, if you need to be able to do coding, et cetera, you get those admin rights from your administrator, whether that's us as the, sorry about that, whether that's us as the enterprise or as a dedicated user, you get that from your team there. So, and that's really from a 10,000-foot view, that is how simple our architecture is there.
And that's typically the architecture we see. I mean, Alex and I, we've talked to multiple customers. You have users from the internet. How are they getting in? Maybe you have a warfighter whose spouse, they need access to the ServiceNow instance. How do they get through? Because they don't have a CAT card. Well, there is a whitelisting process that exists. You have to kind of go through it, get an approval from the DoD CIO, and off you're running. But then if you're in the NIPRNet, right, you already are vetted.
Yep.
Right. So there's this, so we have, implemented or supported this zero trust. There's that word again, right, that Ben talked about earlier, right? Drink that Kool-Aid. So at every level, there's different, sort of implementations or principles of zero trust nested in each and every one of these boxes. So it's definitely something that's there.
So the question I would have is, how many green boxes do you deal with other agencies?
A lot.
We have one green box and a whole bunch of little blue boxes.
Yeah.
Everyone else has a whole bunch of green boxes. So that's really, I mean, in a nutshell, that's the difference between what we're doing and what we think other agencies are doing.
And I love how you have the bottom labeled, the PEOD or DEX, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
S and ATO boundary. This is really, interesting or distinct in that ServiceNow, we have our own provisional authorization, which it's a PATO. That gives the assurances for agencies like VANs. They're able to inherit our controls, and now they're able to kind of like, I wouldn't say fast track, but more so streamline their ATO journey, right? So we have all the documentation. There's been a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, poured in from our compliance team, Justin Matteo and Shamira in the back there, kind of just looking at me, making sure I'm saying things correctly. But yeah, I mean, it's a team effort, but in terms of these boundaries, I like the fact that you have your own ATO boundary to really accentuate the fact that you have leveraged ServiceNow's ATO, and now you have that last mile of security controls, such as implementing multi-factor authentication and so forth. It stems back to the customer responsibility matrix that I talked about earlier, right? So we're probably going to do 75% of the controls as a service provider, but then the other remaining portion, this is where Van's organization will step in en route to their ATO.
The interesting thing with this, though, too, is so there's cost benefits associated with this. So one of the things, actually getting back to like early challenges, the NAVFAC, it sits on an F5, and that's what does break and inspect. It does authorization, or it does authentication for the users. That was sitting in an Azure tenant that regularly went down. So now the HAA that we would normally provide isn't there, but it's not a ServiceNow problem, and it wasn't a PEO digital problem either. It was another organization that they were leaning on to do it. So that took some time and coordination and some understanding across the board to get it up to speed where now it doesn't become a regular burden on everybody. And with that, you are reliant on the authentication tool set that that ATO service provider has. So, but we're even over the course of this next year, we'll be looking, or maybe two, we'll be looking at different ways to do it, because now we have integrations into like their Azure Active Directory. So now we can look at things like single sign-on and other ways to do it. So, but the benefit of that is integrations across the board. So like that Azure Active Directory integration, even though it goes into PEO Digital's instance, well, any other instance that's in that ATO boundary can now use it, right? Mid servers, if you're deploying mid servers, it's as long as it's on a 443 port and protocol, the only thing that needs that Van's ISSM Barbara needs is an ATO of that mid server on whatever environment it's sitting on, and then she can approve it. So the streamlining of a lot of these things, the store, like if we if a customer needs to use a store item that's not if it's ServiceNow provided, it's a use case 1 approval, and then if it's
in the Fed store,
it's in the Fed store, and then if it's a third party, as long as it's a U.S. made Fed store item, it goes through the use case 2 process, I think, and goes through the NAO for final approval. But we're talking weeks of time to value, vice everybody having to do it. And once it's approved, now everybody can use it. So you get economies of scale across the board that way too.
Right. So I know we're coming up on time. We got 7 minutes left, so maybe we could take one.
Well,
maybe
before we go there,
okay, sorry.
I want to like get on my soapbox.
Okay, good. Go for it.
Because I think what we did is really good. I like the idea that.
So you're bragging right now.
I'm bragging, and I say we, but I'm riding on the shoulders of many other folks. I'm not a smart guy, and you can't make me. So, but what we've done as the Navy, not me, but the Navy, the Naval Enterprise, Navy Marine Corps, we've created a model that, as we've talked about here today, avoids a lot of cost for a lot of people. Cost in time, cost in money, cost in manpower, cost in missed opportunities. So and one thing we didn't talk about here, it's on the slide, we're an IL4 and IL2 capability. We're on the cusp of IL5 and IL6 implementation across the DoD. I imagine there's some other DoD agencies out here today. Anybody from other DoD agencies out here? What if we applied this model instead of just across the naval enterprise and started looking at it as a DoD thing? And we sat down with the Air Force and we sat down with the Army and we started saying, hey, if we develop this ATO, let's have reciprocity. Let's do this at not as an enterprise, naval enterprise, but as a DoD enterprise, so that we don't all have to do this. And we don't all have to go through the pain of getting to an ATO. And we talked about this was kind of a light bulb. It was like I knew it, but it didn't really ring for me. You guys have all heard the idea of the data lake. Well, this ATO allows us to have a unified data lake that allows us to delve into the data that we're creating as we populate all of our ServiceNow applications. And if we can do that at the naval level, why can't we do that at a DoD level? And what kind of value can we drive from that if we turn AI and machine learning onto that data lake? I don't know, I just think that there's a huge untapped potential here, that not only in just doing the ATO piece, but what are the follow-on? What are the knock-on advantages that we get from thinking outside the box, from starting to not just be these stovepipe organizations that do everything on our own? And I know I may be this kind of crazy talk, I know, but you know, what is the realm of the possibility here? What can we do?
Right, right.
So,
Oh, we got 4 minutes left, so is there one question? Oh, she raised her hand first. All right. All right, you got the floor. What's your question?
so I'm going to use like we've just upgraded. Our San Diego upgrade will go live, I think, tomorrow.
Tokyo.
Tokyo, I'm sorry. Yeah, we already did San Diego.
Right.
Right?
I was going to say, wait a minute. That's
Well, the thing is, the advantages that we're doing here, we had Tokyo scheduled for October on our timeline, and we will have it implemented. I believe it fully implemented tomorrow, which is again 2 days ahead of schedule, because we had said we were going to do it by Wednesday of this week. So we're ahead of schedule, which is a great thing. But for our Tokyo upgrade, what we do is we put out a schedule to all of our customers, whether you're an enterprise customer or whether you're a dedicated customer. We say, okay, this is the day we go to code freeze. So have everything backed up by then. Give us, for our dedicated customers, give us your timeline to implement the changes. We give them a gold disk that has all of the ATO upgrades, all the changes that we need to do for our controls. That's given to them. All they have to do is implement it and tell us that it's done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the gold disk that Van talks about is really just a separate dedicated dev instance of ServiceNow. So we set that up for them, and that is solely dedicated to the security controls that they have to push. So that's where they drive all of it out of, is to every other instance. They push it into dev, and then those customers run it through their stack.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this session.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for your attention. Happy drinking, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Good.